Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I want to thank you for listening in. As you know, you can go to my website, listen to all my podcasts I've done today. David Horowitz, Star Parker, and also an up-and-coming conservative thinker, Dexter Pitts. And you get his book, I Am Pitts, at Amazon.com. We strongly encourage people to do that. You can also catch my YouTube channel. Please go to my YouTube channel, hit like, and subscribe. Today we have with us, ma'am, Cheryl Chumley. Is that correct? Did I say that last name right? Chumley? Yes, okay. Fantastic author. She's an online opinion editor for the Washington Times, an award-winning journalist with more than 15 years of experience covering Capitol Hill, local politics. Her publication credits include Newsmax, The Blaze, the Washington Times, Washington Examiner, and her latest book is Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. Ma'am, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Let me just say this before I wanted to talk to you about this whole Roe versus Wade situation, the Supreme Court leak, things like that. I wanted to share this with you real quick, get your quick response. You know, ma'am, I used to be a former Marxist, and I'm just not talking about believing it. I mean, I was actively involved in the socialist movement in the United States of America. I met some of the most prominent socialist, communist, Marxists this country's ever had. So today, obviously, I'm not obviously I've disposed of that thinking. And I am amazed. If you had spoken to me back at the time when I was a Marxist socialist and all, and said to me, hey, guess what? We're going to be a hop, skip, and a jump from nominating a socialist to be the Democratic Party's presidential candidate, I would have called you nuts. I would have told you stop drinking so much Kentucky bourbon. When I look at some of these things like critical race theory, when I first saw it, I started laughing because I was saying, "Oh my God, this is a Gramsci. This is that Italian Marxist. This is Gramsci through and through." So, how did it happen? How did it happen? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do have thoughts on it. I think that it's no coincidence that as America has turned more and more secular, America has also turned more and more toward government for solutions and redress of all issues, which of course has opened the door wide for biggest government to come. And this is why we stand on the precipice right now of turning down a path of just full-blown socialism, where we're open socialists. We're not just socialists in ideology, quiet socialists behind the door, but our government is actually socialist and bold about it. And I think the solution, if the problem is that we have turned away from God, and in a country where rights are supposed to come from God, not government, that is a recipe for a disaster. I think we're just a short, to borrow a phrase from you, hop, skip, and jump from just being full-blown, outright open socialists in America.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, folks, I just want to let you know that this is the author of Lockdown, Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. Ma'am, let's talk next few minutes here. Let's talk about this whole Roe versus Wade in the Supreme Court leak, they possibly overturning Roe versus Wade. And I heard all sorts of stuff on my Facebook page and other things. Oh my God, they're going to abolish abortion. They're taking away reproductive rights. Are people reading that right?
No. It's no word. So what the deal is, first and foremost, let's remember that the ruling, so-called in air quotes, that came out was preliminary, right? So there's nothing final about it. We think we know where the justices stand on Roe v. Wade and where they might rule, but we don't really, because it's preliminary. But even if the ruling in its preliminary form were to come out as penned, it doesn't throw out Roe v. Wade. All it does is turn the matter of abortion to the individual states to decide, which is where it should have stayed in the first place. 50 years ago, states booted their legislative authority on abortion to the U.S. Supreme Court to ultimately rule that it was a woman's right based on privacy. But that doesn't recognize the authority of the 10th Amendment in the Constitution, something that even Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself said before she died, that
Yes.
Roe v. Wade does not have the constitutional strength to stand at the U.S. Supreme Court. So what will happen is each and every state's legislatures will have to go on record with their lawmakers and decide with votes whether or not to uphold abortion rights in their states and to what degree. So in some states, maybe abortion would be outright, banned. Very few states would probably take that dramatic step. In other states, there would be limits, maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or maybe the first trimester would be the limit for abortion. And in other states, there may be unfettered and free access to abortion. But what will happen is that the people will finally have their voices heard because, of course, lawmakers will be very accountable to the people with their open and transparent votes. And if you don't like how they voted, you could either move from your state, which sounds harsh, but really what you could do is take out your anger or your outrage at the ballot box and usher in a new slate of legislators who will vote in accordance with your will.
Do you think what you just said there, it goes to the state legislature, and basically what you said, don't let me put words in your mouth, that it would be those people in the state level, they're more accessible, more accountable to voters. Do you think that's what these abortion rights advocates fear?
I do. I do think they fear that because, of course, then you're not going to have this blanket allowance across the United States for abortion, with the fight only being on certain limits that are placed on access to abortion in states. You're actually going to have to battle for, first and foremost, the right to abort versus the right of the pro-life movement to save a baby's life. And that's a fight that abortion activists do not want to have, especially when it's going to make their lawmakers take open and transparent votes, and it's going to hold them accountable in the end.
Wow. All right. Let's touch upon one other issue here too. I believe, one or two of the justices, these pro-abortion people, went to their homes, protesting rather vigorously. Did you see that as a form of intimidation?
I saw that as an attempt at intimidation, and to the justices' credit, a couple of them came out and in no uncertain terms explained that they would not be swayed by such intimidation tactics.
Yes, and I think that's here in Louisville, here in Kentucky, Daniel Cameron is the Attorney General. And he's a conservative Republican, and he's a Black man. And they went to his home and, protested and all. And the one thing I said is that I found that fascinating that they would do that, because I know Medgar Evers, when he came home one evening, he was an NAACP organizer down, I think, in Mississippi. When he came home one evening, some guy popped out of his bushes and shot him. So, I said to myself, boy, I was really sort of disgusted and disappointed that they would do that, go to Daniel Cameron's home, his private home, and do something like that, given that history. We know the famous photograph of Malcolm X, how his home was bombed, and he was standing there by the window with a weapon. King Jr., his home was bombed. I don't know. There's something about these people. I just think that they're just not above acts of violence against people who just disagree with them with some political views. I think your open season, at your office, I think that's open season. You're probably public speaking event, but your private home, boy, that just doesn't sit well with me. I don't know what your thoughts or feelings are on that.
Well, I definitely think that there's going to be a backlash because most Americans agree that certain things should be off limits, certain things should be sacred, no matter what your political beliefs are. And when you get home, you shouldn't have to deal with thuggery in the streets, just several feet from maybe where your children are. And
Yes.
so I think it's abhorrent the idea of taking the active, the activism to somebody's home. I think it's more than unnecessary also because, to call this a First Amendment freedom, I suppose you can make that case. But what I see from the leftists who engage in such activism is that they see in their worldview that this is it. That they have to win at all costs. And they think that whatever means they use, it's justified so long as in the end, they gain an inch, a foot, a half mile, whatever. And so the desperation of the left to engage in such political activism, well, it is abhorrent to most in America. I truly think that the left actually believes that they are making the right call. And that just shows to me the lunacy of the left, the ability of them to misread the politics and culture of a situation and actually engage in semi-violent or even outright violent tactics in order to bring about their desired ends.
Yes. Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. And go to my website to see view my other podcast interviews. It's at booktalkwithcorbin.com. Again, I have there David Horowitz, Star Parker, and Dexter Pitts, the author of I Am Pitts. Miss Chumley, ma'am, where can we get your book, your latest book, Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom?
Thank you. At Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, of course, anywhere you get your books. Thank you for that.
Sure. I mean, and I think it's important to people to get it. And I just want to share with my listeners, and they've heard this before. I'm a former Marxist, and I'm telling you, there was a time when I would read conservative thinkers, authors, and I'd say to myself, man, these guys, they always seem to be sounding the trumpet. Oh my God, the enemy's around the corner and all. Then years later, I'm like, well, they were right. We were around the corner. I just never would have guessed that all these the success of the cultural Marxism, and also some of the success of this insanity of insisting on wanting to teach 5-, 6-year-olds about gender ideology and gender identification and things like that. Ma'am, I don't know, but in my day, that would have been considered abuse.
It is abuse, right? And it's fascinating to me that you have changed from a card-carrying Marxist to somebody, I don't know your politics. I only assume you're more conservative in nature, but
yes.
Most of the time, I can never get involved in a conversation with somebody who is or was a Marxist because they don't seem to want to speak openly about politics nowadays. And certainly those on the left don't want to come on my own podcast to discuss why they think what they do. So it's fascinating to me that you have moved so dramatically in your belief. And, kudos to you because that shows critical thinking is very much alive and well in America.
Well, thank you very much. By the way, my profession is I'm a chess coach. And so that's the one thing I learned very quickly. Yeah, right. I mean, not teaching young people what to think, but teaching them how to think. And so
right.
that wasn't the critical reason why I moved from leftist politics. I'd have to say it was my daughter. But that's one thing that as a chess coach, you got to teach young people how to think, not what to think. So that may be part of it there. So I appreciate that compliment. I appreciate you coming on. I hope that you can come on again sometime. Let me just say this in conclusion again, folks, we've been speaking to Cheryl Chumley. Her latest book is Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. As she stated, you can get it most anywhere, but Amazon.com, would you say Books A Million and Barnes & Noble? Yes, yep. Please, please, folks, go get that book. Go get that book. And don't just buy one copy for yourself, buy a second copy and give it to some of these college graduates. All right, folks. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you.